I turned 70 on a rainy Tuesday in April. I didn't expect a grand party, just a phone call from my daughter. Maybe a homemade card from the grandkids. I baked a cake myself, chocolate with orange zest, the kind my late husband used to love. I set the table for one, and as the rain tapped against the window panes, I tried not to feel pathetic. By 9 p.m., I accepted the truth. My daughter, Lindsay, had forgotten. It wasn't the first time she'd overlooked something important, but birthdays used to mean something between us when she was a child. We used to have a tradition: tea and cake at exactly 4 p.m. every year, without fail. Even after she moved across the country, she'd still call me at that exact time. Until this year, the phone didn't ring. Not once. Cried in the bathtub that night, feeling every bit of those 70 years pressing down on me. The house was too quiet, too clean, too forgotten. But 2 days later, a package arrived. No card, no note, just a square box wrapped in plain brown paper. Inside was a small, navy blue velvet box. I opened it and found a silver locket. On the front was engraved, "For the mother who gave me everything." My breath caught in my throat. Lindsay had given me jewelry before, but never something so personal. I pressed the latch and the locket popped open. Inside were 2 tiny photos, one of Lindsay, aged about 4, smiling in a flower field, and one I'd never seen before, black and white baby picture of a child I didn't recognize. Underneath the velvet box, carefully folded, was a sheet of paper. It was a copy of a birth certificate. My eyes scanned it, and for a moment I didn't understand what I was reading. But then I saw the name: Mother, Lindsay Bennett. Child, Noah James. Date of birth, September 7, 2003. Lindsay had a son. 20 years ago, and she had never told me. I sat at my kitchen table for what must have been an hour, the birth certificate trembling in my hands. Lindsay had a child, and she had never told me. 20 years had gone by, 20 birthdays, 20 Christmases, 20 Mother's Days, and not once had she mentioned a son. My daughter, the one I raised alone after her father died in that accident, had carried this secret like a second life, tucked behind her smile. At first, I thought it must be a mistake. Maybe she was helping a friend. Maybe this was adoption paperwork. Maybe, God help me, I was misreading something. But no, her name was right there. Lindsay Marie Bennett. Date of birth matched. So did the hospital where she'd been born. I stared at the name of the child again. Noah James. It didn't sound like a stranger. It sounded familiar, like something my bones should have remembered. Had I ever heard her whisper it in her sleep as a teenager? Had I ever caught a flicker of pain in her eyes when we passed a baby aisle in the store? I stood up, the kitchen chair scraping loudly against the tile. My heart thudded like it wanted answers before I could breathe. I needed to talk to her, but I didn't call. I couldn't. What would I even say? "Hey, sweetie, thanks for the necklace. And oh, by the way, what the hell happened 20 years ago that made you hide your own child from me?" Instead, I walked into the den and opened the cedar chest under the window. It was where I kept all the photos, the letters, the journals from when Lindsay was small. I needed to look at her face. I needed to remember who she had been, who we had been, and I needed to figure out when she started hiding things from me. I found her high school yearbooks, pages of scribbled notes from classmates, a photo of her with her arms around her best friend, Carla. They were grinning wide, carefree, invincible. I flipped through until I found her senior year, 2003, the year she would have been pregnant. I stared at her photo. Her smile was bright, but now that I was looking for it, I saw it. The stiffness in her posture, the slight puffiness under her eyes, a faint hollowness in her cheeks that hadn't been there before. How had I missed it? Then I remembered something. That summer, she told me she was volunteering at a summer camp in Oregon. She'd been gone for nearly 3 months. When she came back, she was thinner, quiet, said she was just tired from all the hiking and late nights with the kids. I believed her because I had no reason not to, because Lindsay was my daughter, and I thought she told me everything. But she'd been hiding a pregnancy, giving birth, giving up a child, and I hadn't been there. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, watching the blades spin in slow circles like the thoughts in my head. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. Why didn't she tell me? Was I that kind of mother, the kind you couldn't come to with something painful? Was I too harsh, too judgmental? Or was it something else entirely? Shame, fear, or maybe Maybe someone else told her to keep it from me. The thought made me sit up suddenly. There was only one person who had been close enough to Lindsay at that time to influence her decisions like that. Someone who didn't like me much. Someone who had always made it clear she thought I was too old-fashioned, too nosy, too involved. Her father's sister, Aunt Naomi, and suddenly, I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years, something that now sent a chill down my spine. Lindsay came back from Oregon in early September, but before that, in July, I got a letter from Naomi, postmarked from Portland. It was short and strange. She said Lindsay was doing just fine, and that I shouldn't worry. I'd assumed she was just trying to be helpful. Now I wondered if she was covering something up. The next morning, I pulled out my old address book and found Naomi's number. She answered on the second ring. Hello. I hadn't spoken to her in years. Not since a petty disagreement over some inheritance paperwork. But I didn't have time for small talk. Naomi, I said, I need to know the truth. About Lindsay. About that summer she spent in Oregon. There was a long pause. Then, with a sigh so heavy it carried 20 years of secrets, she said, I was wondering when you'd finally find out. I was wondering when you'd finally find out. The words came slowly, like she was peeling a wound that had scabbed over decades ago. I gripped the phone tighter. My mouth had gone dry. You knew, I asked. All these years, you knew. Lindsay had a child. Naomi was quiet for a moment, and then I heard her chair creak like she was settling in. She was 17, just a kid, scared out of her mind. I closed my eyes, the image of my daughter, as a frightened teenager crashing over me like a tidal wave. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because she begged me not to, Naomi said flatly. She thought you'd hate her, that you'd be disappointed. She was ashamed, and you were grieving. I blinked. Grieving. For Frank, she said. You've just passed the 1-year mark since his death. You were barely getting out of bed. If you remember, Lindsay thought she'd break you if she added this on top. I sank slowly into the kitchen chair. I did remember those months. They were foggy, like someone had turned down the brightness on the world. I barely remembered the meals I cooked, the clothes I wore. I'd cry in the laundry room so Lindsay wouldn't see, but she had seen, and she had shouldered her own heartbreak, alone because she thought I couldn't handle hers. She came to me, Naomi continued, her voice surprisingly gentle, told me she thought she was pregnant. I took her to a doctor. I helped her find the home in Oregon. She wanted to go through with the pregnancy but not raise the baby. Said she couldn't, not then. I was shaking. So she gave him up for adoption. She planned to, Naomi said. But things didn't go the way any of us expected. I straightened up. What do you mean? There was another pause. This one felt heavier. She didn't go through an agency, Naomi said. She met a woman, someone I knew, loosely from a community group. A woman named Rachel Loring. Rachel and her husband had been trying for years to have a child. She'd had 3 miscarriages. When Lindsay met her, she saw how desperate Rachel was for a baby. It was all very emotional, very intense. Lindsay agreed to a private adoption. No lawyers, no papers, just trust. Dear God, I whispered. It was supposed to be a closed arrangement, but about a year later, Lindsay started getting letters. My heart skipped. From Rachel. No. From a man claiming to be the boy's biological father. What? Apparently, Lindsay had never told him she was pregnant. He found out after the fact and tracked her down. He was furious. Claimed she had no right to give away his child without his knowledge. Said he'd fight for custody. Rachel panicked. She cut off all contact. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. And what happened to the boy, to Noah? I don't know, Naomi admitted. We never heard from Rachel again. Lindsay tried to reach out when she turned 25, but everything came back undeliverable. No address, no phone. It was like Rachel disappeared. I stared at the locket lying on the table beside me. Then why now? I asked. Why send me this locket now? And the birth certificate? Naomi exhaled slowly. Because she's been looking for him, quietly, for years. She never told you because, well, maybe because she was ashamed. Or maybe because she was afraid of what you'd think of her. But something must have changed. Maybe she found him. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. Found him, I whispered. She's your daughter, Nora. You know how determined she gets when something matters to her. If she sent you that birth certificate, it's not by accident. The line went quiet, but her words echoed in my mind. If Lindsay had found her son, why hadn't she just told me outright? Unless something was wrong. I have to go, I told Naomi. I didn't wait for her to say goodbye. I hung up the phone and stared at the photos in the locket again. The little boy in black and white. Big eyes. Serious expression. Not a baby anymore. He'd be 20 now. Old enough to vote. Old enough to vanish. If he wanted to. And maybe that's exactly what had happened. I had a daughter carrying the guilt of a lifetime. A grandson I never knew I had. And a feeling deep in my gut that I'd just been pulled into a story that was far from over. That night, I waited until it was late in New York where Lindsay lived and I picked up the phone. She answered on the second ring. Mom, her voice was soft, tired. I got your package, I said, my voice shaking just slightly. She was silent. Then, I thought you might. Why now, Lindsay? I asked. Why after all these years? And then she said something that made my blood go cold. Because, Mom, he found me. And he doesn't want to meet me, but he wants to meet you. I didn't sleep that night, thought the words echoed over and over in my mind. He doesn't want to meet me, but he wants to meet you. I couldn't understand it. Why me? I wasn't the one who gave him up. I wasn't the one who held him as a newborn, only to walk away. I wasn't the one who kept him a secret for 2 decades. But maybe that was exactly why, at 7 a.m., I was already dressed, sitting on the edge of my bed with the locket in my hand. I'd barely closed my eyes. All I could see was that boy's face, Noah, my grandson. A name and a face I'd never expected to belong to me. By 8 o'clock, I was on the phone with Lindsay again. Where is he? I asked as soon as she picked up. Is he safe? Yes, she said quickly. He's not in any trouble. He's just figuring things out. Tell me everything, Lindsay. From the beginning. She sighed. He found me a month ago. Said he got my name from an old letter Rachel kept. Apparently I wrote it on a whim when he was 10, just to say I was thinking of him. Rachel never mailed it, but she kept it. Where is she now? She passed away last year. Cancer. Noah found the letter, going through her things. My heart sank. Whatever faults this Rachel woman had, she'd still been the mother who raised my grandson. Grief wasn't something you could argue with. He reached out to me on Facebook, Lindsay continued, said he didn't want a relationship. Not yet, but he had questions about where he came from, about why I did what I did. I could hear the pain in her voice, the tightness she was trying to hide. He didn't want to see me. Said he didn't think he was ready. But then, 2 days ago, he asked if you were still alive. My throat tightened. What did you tell him? That you were kind, that you didn't know anything. A pause. And that you would love him the moment you met him. I covered my mouth with my hand. Lindsay cleared her throat. He said he wants to meet you first. Said he needs to meet someone who didn't leave. The words punched a hole in my chest. Where is he now? I whispered. He's in Chicago. He goes to school there. He's in his 3rd year at Northwestern, studying music theory. Music, like his grandfather. Frank played piano every night until the cancer took away his hands. I'll go, I said. Mom, I said I'll go. There was a long silence, and when Lindsay finally spoke again, her voice cracked. Thank you. 2 days later, I was on a plane. I hadn't traveled since before the pandemic. I had no idea what to expect. I wore my best coat, the navy one with the brass buttons, the one Lindsay always said made me look elegant. I brought the locket. I even bought a notebook in case I wanted to write something for him and lost my nerve to say it aloud. I felt like I was heading into a job interview for a role I didn't apply for, grandmother to a stranger. When I arrived at the cafe near campus, I spotted him immediately. He was sitting by the window. Black beanie pulled low, over a mop of curly dark hair, denim jacket, one foot tapping anxiously against the floor, and God help me he had Frank's eyes. I stood there for a moment, just staring. He looked up and met my gaze, didn't smile, didn't wave, but he stood up, and that was enough. I walked to the table, my legs felt like paper. Noah, he nodded. Hi, I said. I'm Nora. I'm your grandmother. He motioned to the chair across from him. I sat. There was a long silence between us. The cafe was busy as students with laptops, baristas, calling out drink orders, the hiss of steaming milk butt between us. It felt like the whole room had gone quiet. I look like him, don't I? Noah said at last. My heart clenched. You look like both of them, I said softly. Your mother, and Frank, my husband. He died before you were born. Noah nodded. I figured. I'm sorry I didn't know about you, I said. I would have. I know, he interrupted. I don't blame you. I blame the situation. That felt generous, too generous, maybe. He reached into his pocket and pulled something out. It was a worn photo, folded carefully down the middle. He slid it across the table. It was a photo of Rachel, holding a baby on her hip, standing in a sunlit park. Her smile was full and proud. The baby Noah was gripping her shirt with a tiny fist, chubby and unaware of the world about to unfold. She was a good mom, he said, flawed, but good. I believe that, I said honestly. After she died, I started wondering where the rest of me came from. The parts she couldn't explain. I'm glad you reached out. Noah looked at me. Really looked at you. Seem calm. I smiled gently. Inside, I'm terrified, but I'm trying not to show it. He laughed a small, surprised sound, and for the first time I saw it. The ease. The possibility. The future. We talked for over an hour about books, music, his favorite composers, my garden, his late mother's love of vanilla ice cream with balsamic glaze, something I promised I'd never try. Eventually, I pulled out the locket and slid it across to him. It's for you, I said. I don't expect anything in return. I thought you should have it. He opened it, saw his baby photo, and the picture of Lindsay at 4. He didn't say anything, but he didn't push it away either. When we stood to leave, he hesitated. Then, quietly, he leaned in and hugged me. It wasn't long, but it was real. Thank you for coming, he said. I watched him walk away into the drizzle, shoulders hunched slightly against the cold. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again, but I knew I had just taken the first step in becoming someone he might let in. When I returned home from Chicago, my house felt different. Not emptier, not colder, just shifted, like someone had moved all the furniture 2 inches to the left. The same space, but no longer familiar. I'd met my grandson. I'd held him. I'd smelled the soap in his collar and the worn denim of his jacket when he hugged me goodbye, and I couldn't stop thinking, how different would my life have been if I'd known him from the beginning? How different would his life have been? That night, I sat in the living room with a cup of tea and an ache in my chest. I pulled out the notebook I'd brought with me to Chicago, the one I never opened. I started writing, not to Noah, but to Lindsay. Lindsay, you don't owe me answers, but I need you to know something. I would have stood by you. I would have helped you raise him, or helped you let go, if that's what you needed. I would have shown up, in whatever way you asked. You were never alone, you just didn't know it because you didn't ask. But I understand now. You thought I was too broken, that I couldn't carry both our griefs. You were wrong, but I forgive you. He's a good young man. You made hard choices. I see the weight of them on both your shoulders. Maybe now's the time to let him see the other side of the story, not the shame. Not the fear, but the part where you loved him so much you thought disappearing was the kindest thing you could do. And maybe you can love yourself enough to stop disappearing. Mom. I mailed the letter the next morning. Lindsay didn't call right away, and I didn't expect her to. But 4 days later, she showed up at my door with red eyes and trembling hands. I barely had time to open the door before she collapsed into my arms. She sobbed like a child, like the 17-year-old she used to be. The one who'd needed her mother and found only silence because she'd never asked for noise. I didn't know what else to do. She whispered into my coat. I was so scared. I know, I said. I know, sweetheart. We sat at the kitchen table for hours. No tea, no distractions. Just her story finally told. She told me everything. How she'd found out she was pregnant the week after her prom. How she waited too long to tell anyone because she kept hoping it would go away. How she couldn't bear to tell me, not after the way I'd stopped smiling after Dad died. How could I walk in and drop that on you? She asked. You could barely get out of bed some days. I thought I'd break you. You wouldn't have, I said, but I understand why you thought you might. She told me how Naomi had been calm and pragmatic, arranged everything. The trip to Oregon, the meetings with Rachel, the birth, the goodbye. Do you remember when I came back, with that bracelet you said looked too expensive for a summer camp counselor? She asked with a crooked smile. I nodded slowly. I did remember. A thin silver chain with a delicate charm. It was from Rachel, she said. A thank you gift. I kept it for years, until Noah turned 10. Then I mailed it to him with a birthday card. Rachel never wrote back. There was a pause. I always wondered if she gave it to him, or if she just threw it away. I didn't know the answer, but I remembered the photo Noah showed me in the cafe, the one of Rachel, holding him in the sun. She loved him, I said gently. I saw it in her eyes. Lindsay nodded, biting her lip. She did. But she was scared too. Scared I'd come back one day and take him. Scared he'd love me more. He didn't, I said. Not more. Not less. Just differently. Like he's trying to carry two truths in the same heart. She smiled then. Fragile but real. I want to see him, she said, but I don't want to make it worse. Then start small, I said. A letter, a message, an honest one this time. She nodded. That weekend, she wrote him an email. It took her 2 days and 5 drafts. She didn't send it right away, just saved it, then unsaved it, then rewrote it. In the end, she sent a message that simply said, "Hi, Noah. I understand why you didn't want to see me. I'm just glad you wanted to see her. I don't expect anything, but I'd like to answer your questions if and when you're ready. No pressure. Just love, Lindsay." A week passed with no response. Then, on a Sunday morning, Noah sent a photo. It was the Locket open, sitting in the palm of his hand. Underneath it was one word, maybe. The word maybe was like a thread of light slipping through a long curtain. Lindsay read Noah's message a dozen times, each time with a different expression: relief, fear, hope, shame. I didn't rush her. We were past the days of rushing anything. A few nights later, she called me just before bed. Her voice was calm but distant. He replied again. She said, "What did he say?" He asked if I'd meet him. "Just for coffee." He said he wants to see me in person, but he's not sure he can call me Mom. I felt something shift in her voice, like a quiet cracking beneath the surface. I told him he didn't have to. The next week, they met in the same cafe where I'd first seen him. Lindsay didn't ask me to come. I wouldn't have, even if she had. This was their moment, and it needed to be unfiltered. But afterward, she came straight to my house. I watched her from the window, her coat clutched tight around her, shoulders tense. I opened the door before she knocked. "He's so tall," she said, the second she stepped inside. I don't know why I imagined him as still being little. She took off her coat, sat down at the kitchen table like she was 17 again. Then she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. "He asked me if I loved him," she said softly. I told him I never stopped. I sat across from her. He didn't say anything for a while, just stared at his coffee. Then, he said, "I figured you didn't, because if you had, you wouldn't have left." Her hands trembled slightly. She looked down at them. I told him I left because I thought it was the only way to protect him. That I was 17, scared, and too ashamed to ask for help. That I thought giving him to someone who wanted to be a mother was the most selfless thing I could do. She looked up, eyes glassy. And then I told him the truth. What truth? She swallowed. That I never forgave myself, not even once. That every time I heard a child laugh in a grocery store, I wondered if it sounded like him. That every birthday, I bought a gift and never mailed it. My throat tightened. What did he say? He said he's still not ready to call me Mom. She gave a sad little laugh. But he didn't leave. He stayed for a second coffee. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "I wrote him something," she said, "in case I froze up." I gave it to him when we hugged goodbye. She didn't open the envelope, just placed it gently on my table like it was sacred. The next day, Noah texted me, "Hey Nora, would it be weird if we did dinner, like all 3 of us? You, me, her, just to see if it feels like something worth building." My fingers hovered over my phone for a long moment. Then I typed, "Dinner sounds perfect. I'll make pot roast. Hope you like mashed potatoes." He replied with a thumbs up emoji. And then, after a pause, "I'll bring dessert. Lindsay said you like lemon bars." I stared at that message for a long time. He called her Lindsay. Not Mom, not Mother, but not that woman either. It was a start. That Saturday, I cooked like I hadn't cooked in years. The good dishes came out. The table was set for 3. I lit candles, not for romance but for comfort, for warmth, for memory. When the doorbell rang, I answered it with a hand on my heart. Noah was standing there in a dark sweater and jeans, holding a white bakery box in one hand and a 6-pack of cream soda in the other. Lindsay stood beside him. She wasn't touching him. She wasn't even looking at him, but she stood close enough that if either of them leaned just slightly, their shoulders would touch. "Hi," Noah said, offering a small smile. "Hope we're not too early." "Not at all," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." Dinner wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences. There was a moment when Lindsay started telling a story from high school and Noah looked down at his plate like he was somewhere far away. But there were also laughs. Noah told us about a professor who fell asleep during a student recital and snored through a violin solo. Lindsay snorted her water when he mimicked the snore. I saw something begin to shift, like the hinges on a rusted door loosening just enough to let a little air in. After dessert, we lingered at the table. Lindsay reached into her bag and pulled out a wrapped box. "It's nothing fancy," she said quickly, handing it to Noah. I wanted to give you something." He unwrapped it slowly. It was a photo frame, silver simple. Inside was a picture of Lindsay holding him at the hospital. He was seconds old. His tiny body curled against her chest. Noah stared at it for a long time. Then he whispered, "I've never seen this before." Lindsay's voice cracked. "I only have one copy. I kept it in my sock drawer for 20 years. He didn't say anything for a while. Then, quietly, he said, "Thanks." Lindsay smiled. It was small and hesitant, but it was real. Later, as Noah helped me clear the table, he looked at me and said, "You know, I never really knew what it meant to feel like family. Rachel tried, but it always felt like we were borrowing it, renting it." He looked around the room at the candles, the framed photos, the warmth that lingered in the air like steam after a hot bath. "I think I get it now." I smiled, tears blurring my vision. "You're home, Noah," I said softly. "Maybe not all at once, but we'll build it, one meal at a time." 2 weeks after that dinner, Lindsay brought me an envelope that was thin, white, no return address. "He sent this to me," she said, placing it carefully on my coffee table. "Said he wasn't ready to talk yet, but he wanted me to have it." I stared at the envelope. My hands itched to open it, but I knew it wasn't mine to read. "I haven't opened it either," Lindsay admitted. "I'm scared." I looked at her, really looked. Lindsay had always been strong, quietly, stubbornly, sometimes foolishly so. But this was the first time I'd seen her soft in years. Not broken, not ashamed, just vulnerable. "I'll stay with you while you read it," I said gently. She nodded. With trembling fingers, she opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. Her eyes scanned the page, moving fast at first, then slower, then stopping altogether. I waited. She finally spoke, voice raw. "He wrote that he forgives me." A breath escaped her lips like a dam breaking. "He said he doesn't understand everything yet, that it still hurts, but that he's starting to believe I did the best I could with what I had." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "There's more," she whispered, eyes glistening. "He wants to meet again, just the two of us. Maybe next week." "That's good," I said. She nodded, then hesitated. "There's one more thing." She handed me a second piece of paper that had fallen out of the envelope. It was printed, not handwritten. A name, a phone number. "Who is this?" I asked. Lindsay looked down. "His birth father." The air in the room shifted. "I tracked him down a few months ago," she said quietly. "I didn't tell Noah. I wasn't sure if I should, but apparently Rachel told him everything before she passed, including the name. He found him on his own." I felt the weight of it settle between us. "Do you think he's reached out?" Lindsay shrugged, eyes wide and uncertain. "I don't know, but I think he's thinking about it." We were quiet for a while. Then she added, "I haven't heard that name in 20 years, and now it's back, like a ghost I didn't expect to find at the table." I understood what she meant. The past had a way of reappearing just when you thought it had settled into silence. Sometimes it knocked gently, other times it kicked the door down. I folded the note and handed it back. "Whatever happens," I said, "he has us." A few nights later, Noah texted me, "Can we talk? Just you and me, in person." We met again, at the same cafe. It had started to feel like neutral ground, a place between the before and the after. He looked different this time. Not in a big way, just clearer, like he was seeing himself more sharply. "I talked to him," he said. "He didn't need to say who. He lives in Michigan, 2 hours away, works as a landscape designer. Said he never knew Rachel kept me. Thought I was adopted by strangers." "Are you going to meet him?" I asked softly. Noah shrugged. "Eventually, maybe. Right now, it's too much." I nodded. "There's no rush." There never was. He sipped his coffee, then looked at me. "You know, I used to think the word family meant biology, DNA, a name on a birth certificate. And now," he smiled faintly, "now I think it means who shows up, who listens, who forgives." A pause. Then he said, "That's you. You showed up." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'm glad I did." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small wrapped package. For you, he said, placing it on the table. It's nothing fancy, I smiled. That's what your mom said before she gave you the photo frame. I know, he smirked. She told me. I unwrapped the package carefully. It was a music box, simple, wooden, carved, with flowers and vines. Inside, when I turned the key, it played a melody I hadn't heard in decades. Claire de Lune, Frank's favorite. I found the sheet music in your husband's old box, Noah said. The one in the attic. Mom kept it all these years. I had this made. Custom. My hand flew to my mouth. He was watching me closely now. You've given me so much already, but I wanted to give you something back. I looked at him. I never expected this. I said, any of this? He nodded. Me neither. Then, quietly, he asked, can I come to Sunday dinner again? I smiled through my tears. Every week, if you want. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I think I do. Sunday dinner had become tradition. It started as once a month, then twice. Now, every Sunday at 5 p.m., my little house filled with the smells of roasted chicken, garlic bread, and whatever pie. I'd convinced myself I still had the stamina to bake. Noah arrived early. Now, he'd bring his own apron, put on one of Frank's old jazz records, and help me peel carrots or stir sauce while humming under his breath. Lindsay would come a little later, always bringing something extra store-bought salad, a loaf of warm bread, sometimes just a new story from her classroom. She'd gone back to teaching part-time. The kids loved her. So did Noah. He didn't say it, not in words, but you could see it in the way he watched her, now not guarded, not tense, but curious, open, willing. Dot and Lindsay. She never pushed, never begged, never once asked him to call her mom again, but she listened when he spoke, remembered the small things, brought up stories from her own teenage years so he'd know he wasn't the only one who'd made mistakes. One night, while I was washing dishes and they were drying them side by side, I heard him say it so quietly, I almost missed it. Hey, Mom, can I borrow your umbrella? I left mine at school. Lindsay froze. The dishcloth in her hand dropped to the counter. She turned her head just slightly, blinking like she'd misheard. But he said it again, this time with a little smirk, teasing. It's raining. Mom, you wouldn't want your son walking around soaked, would you? She covered her mouth, the tears immediate. Not dramatic, just real, deep healing. Of course not, she whispered. It's by the door. Later that night, after they'd both gone, I stood in the hallway staring at our newest framed photo. It was taken the previous weekend, at the park where I used to push Lindsay on the swings as a little girl. Now it held a different scene. The three of us sitting on a bench, shoulders touching, smiling, not forced, not staged, just together. Noah's hand rested on Lindsay's knee, her arm draped around his back, my hand on both their shoulders, a triangle, 3 points, different histories, same hope. Under the photo, in gold script, Lindsay had written, first family photo, 20 years late. Right on time. I traced the words with my finger. In that moment, I thought of all the years I thought were lost, all the dinners that never happened, the birthdays Noah spent blowing out candles somewhere I didn't even know existed, the quiet, aching absence of a child I didn't know I was missing. But now I knew. Now I had a name to say in prayer, a hand to hold across the table, a laugh to echo in my kitchen again. We hadn't undone the past, but we'd reclaimed the future. That spring, we went back to the park, same bench, same camera. Only this time, it wasn't just the three of us. Noah brought someone, a girl named Cassie, sweet, nervous, music major. She played the cello and spoke in soft tones that made my grandson look at her like she was the sunrise. After lunch, while Lindsay walked ahead with Cassie, Noah lingered behind with me. She's great, I said, bumping my elbow into his. He grinned. Yeah, she's the real deal. We walked quietly for a moment. Then he said, I think I want her to know the whole story. About Rachel, about Lindsay, about you, about everything. Usho? I asked. He nodded. I want her to know where I came from and where I ended up. He paused. And how lucky I was that someone decided to show up when I didn't even know I needed them. I smiled and slid my arm through his. We all needed each other, sweetheart. That's what family is. The final scene in my story isn't dramatic. No explosions, no courtroom battles, no viral videos or sudden revelations. It's a quiet Sunday night. My kitchen smells like cinnamon and roasted apples. Lindsay is setting the table. humming a lullaby she used to sing to her dolls. Noah is on the floor, helping Cassie's niece build a tower out of wooden blocks. Cassie laughs when it topples. And me, I'm right where I belong, in the center of a family I almost didn't get to know. A family built not from perfection, but from forgiveness, not from shared blood, but shared truth. A family that started with an empty locket and became a portrait more beautiful than I ever imagined.